start the meeting. Right, so welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. As you know, I do try to run quite sort of relaxed meetings where people can chip in, but you will notice I've just muted everyone, which would be great to have that power in real life, wouldn't it? So as most of you know that have used Zoom, if there's lots of different sort of noises or different microphones, it just overrides everything. So I've not muted you because I don't want you to speak. Please, if you want to chip in, just unmute yourself, put your hand up or whatever, but it's just that not everyone's on mute at the same time. As I said, we are going to record this meeting. If anybody's got a problem with that, please let me know, and we won't put it out. So firstly, thanks everyone for coming. Just want to give a brief update on what we've been doing. We had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, so I don't want to give it too much, but we've been trying to contact members. We've obviously been trying to help members with getting grants, liaising with the council. One of the big things that I've been doing is having weekly at the moment meetings with the TDA and council, where we've been able to put forward businesses' concerns straight to them, which has worked really well. They're still continuing at the moment. We've been talking about the recovery plan with them, which is in the process of coming out this week, I think, which will be interesting to see the final draft of that. One of the things that come out of that meeting is that the council and the TDA have admitted that the communication between businesses and them has been pretty poor in the past. So they are really keen to change that. And part of that is looking at how we communicate with them as well. So we've been looking, which in the past, to be honest, has not been that effective. So we've been looking as chambers, us, Paynton and Torquay Chamber, of how we can work together and put a more unified voice over, because at the moment you've got Torbay Council and they'll get an individual business or a chamber from Brixham with a specific problem, and 6 months later they might get the same problem from Paynton, but it's all a bit disjointed and not joined up. So we are moving forward with that. The plan at the moment is that the individual chamber members and the business forum will formally meet once a month, once every 2 months a full meeting, and once a month every other meeting will be a more relaxed meeting. The TDA will be at that meeting, and it will just give us a formal platform to bring things up with the council on a regular basis. The idea being that we don't just talk to them when there's a specific problem, we can also talk to them about what businesses want to happen, so they can maybe be a bit more proactive. We'll see how it works. What we need from that though is businesses to tell us what you want, so we can pass that on to them. And I think it's a good opportunity. They're very keen to go forward with it, and I think at the moment it's a good time. You know, it's a good time to start that kind of process. So that's really positive. Let's hope it continues to be a positive process. That's quite good. Just to give you sort of a quick update on the feedback that we're getting on the economy in general, Torbay economy, is it's still fairly positive. Most businesses that we're talking to, and I accept that there are exceptions to this, but most businesses that we talk to are fairly positive about the future. That's not to say they think they're going to have a great year. Being positive means that they don't think they're going to go out of business, which is what we want at the moment. Partly because of the help that they've had, and partly because I think there was a real worry and concern that when restrictions were starting to be lifted, the customers still wouldn't come. And though they're not back in the same numbers as what we'd normally expect, they're not far off it in a lot of cases. So that's a really positive thing. I think businesses are ticking over. What we hope that means is that we won't see too many businesses in Brixham close, which would be awful for all of us, to be honest. Just to give you an idea how it's changed, or the forecast has changed during the outbreak. At the beginning of the outbreak, it was Cambridge Economics did a report on Torbay, and they predicted in Torbay there'd be over 16,000 job losses. They've done a revised report in the last 4 to 6 weeks, and that number's now come down to 2,700, which is a massive drop. Now, if that's correct, 2,700 job losses is still a lot, but you can see how much that's improved, and hopefully, you know, if things carry on, that will improve further. So there is some real positive news out there. I think businesses have been working together. I know organisations have been working together a lot. Hi Anthony. And so that's been really good. The other group that I've been meeting on weekly is the Brixham Together group, which is looking at helping people during the crisis with mental health, helping people with food at home, that usually people get sort of free school meals and people like that, which has been really interesting. Now, although I've not been such an integral part of that group, it's been really interesting to be with them, just sort of give them an idea of what, from our, you know, perspective. So we've been assisting them, which has been really positive. So yeah, we've been, since lockdown, I think the Chamber's been probably the busiest it's ever been, and I hope, you know, we're still here, and please contact us, and I hope that we've been able to help people as much as we're able. Just a quick update on, try to give some update on any new information that's coming out, or new grants there's been. Obviously, I'm not going to go over the old ones. Hopefully most of you know about the general grants. New things that are happening is obviously the reduced VAT rate, 5% for hospitality and holiday accommodation. That's from the 15th of July to the 12th of January. The only thing I'll be careful with that is get advice on the tax point. So where you getting to, if you're a holiday provider and you're getting deposits, just be careful when those deposits were received. Now there is an exemption, I believe, where if they were received before the 15th of July, but for a stay between those periods, you can still charge the 5% VAT on it. Just be careful with that. The other help that maybe some of you have claimed is the self-employment grant. There is a second stage of that coming up. You will be able to apply for the second stage on from the 17th of August, so just be aware of that. And it's for people that have been adversely affected on or after the 14th of July. So that's the only criteria, as well as all the same criteria as the first self-employment. So if you applied for the first self-employment grant and you got that, as long as you're still being affected by coronavirus in any way, on or after the 14th of July, you can claim the second one. That's going to be paid out at 70% instead of 80%. And the only other bit of news I think is worth mentioning, this is a long time ahead, but just to let people know, is MTD has reared its head again, making tax digital. I talked about this, been talking about this for years, but it's now going to be rolled out for any VAT registered businesses with a turnover of under 85,000, and also for all self-employed businesses with a turnover of £10,000. The timescale of that is for VAT registered business April 22, and for self-employed businesses not till April 23. So we've got a few years, but just on the really long horizon, just consider that, because you want to be considering it a year before so you can get software in place. That's probably all I wanted to say, because the main reason of tonight really is that we're very lucky to have Anthony with us. So thank you, Anthony, for joining us. I will, if you want to, hi, Anthony.
Thank you very much for having me.
That's all right. No, thank you for joining us. I wonder if you could give us a bit of an update on the current situation in Westminster, and what any plans that are upcoming, really. Just give us a bit of an overview.
Absolutely. Well, firstly, can I start off by thanking all of you, because as you will have seen, I'm in Brixham every week when I am down, and it's now recess, so Parliament stopped sitting, and so I get the opportunity to come around and sort of poke my nose into the shops and to see what businesses are doing, and it is really impressive to see how well Brixham has fared during this crisis. And I have to say, and I hope this is shared, is that the feeling of opportunity is certainly there, but there is also a real remarkable sense of resilience within the community that the businesses that we have in the Southwest and in South Devon can survive this and make sure that we can get through to 2021. There are a couple of things I want to just tag on from what Matthew was saying. I did want to make everyone aware about the Making Tax Digital, or as it was colloquially known as Making Tax Difficult. That is something that I want to make sure, if there are any issues that I can feed them back to central government, I hope you'll let me know, because I know while it's 2022 and 2023, it was very difficult for those businesses above the £50,000, or sorry, the £85,000 threshold when they were going through it. So I don't want anyone to be in the same situation. The VAT cut on hospitality and tourism of 15%, that was an issue that came from businesses in the Southwest, specifically in South Devon. So when the crisis started, I started speaking to businesses in the hospitality and tourism sector who said the one thing we really need immediately is to look at whether or not we can match the rest of Europe and other countries in cutting our VAT to 5%. That went into a letter, into a briefing paper that was supported by 86 of my colleagues on the government benches, and was then put in front of the Chancellor. And when he announced it, he said, this is in direct reflection to those businesses in the Southwest that you put in front of my nose. So I want to also say that that is something I want to carry on. I want to see if we can extend it beyond the 12th of January. I think that would be something that would be hugely beneficial in the long run. And actually, we need to give as much breathing space to businesses as possible. And in the second letter that I have sent the Chancellor, it has also asked for those who took VAT deferments for 2019 to 2020 to have an opportunity to have a payment plan introduced that would be over 3 to 5 years. And therefore they wouldn't have to worry about seeing two bills roll into one into 2021. Any other suggestions and thoughts that are there as to what we can do to help businesses through this crisis, to give them the breathing space, because I do not want to see businesses that are here today not being there tomorrow, especially when they're successful. So I look to you as experts, as local leaders, as to what things I might be able to put in front of the Chancellor, the Business Secretary, and anyone else. But I know we'll probably come on to that on questions. So I'll start off with where we are at the moment. So Parliament has obviously gone into recess. We come back in early September, but that doesn't mean for any second that the work is not going on. Ministers are still in their posts, and they are still, unfortunately, getting a number of emails from me every day on what's going on in South Devon, what we may need to see our small tech businesses, our high tech businesses, our hospitality and tourism sector supported, as well as our fishing and farming and anything else that we have in the area, including what we can do to cultivate new businesses. And one of the things that I've been most reassured about over the last few weeks is just the conversations I've managed to have with the Chancellor. He understands business, and he really does. I mean, not only is he an economist, he understands the need to be able to provide the support and stability to get through the winter if you're in the hospitality and tourism trade, but also to be able to provide that breathing space, and also to provide the opportunity. And so I get the sense, without being able to give you what the actual policy is that he's going to announce in September, the spending review, he is very much engaged in trying to make sure that no business is being clobbered left, right, and centre. There will undoubtedly be changes to the tax system, but that would more likely be the changes to the individual rather than to the businesses. So I realise for some that is obviously a very concerning issue, but I think that is actually probably the right approach to be taking. The Chancellor has also sort of thrown down the gauntlet to us all to say, go back to your constituencies, make sure you know what businesses want, and come back to me and ask. And that is what I hope this call will be, and I will do as many of these calls as you like, because I think they're incredibly useful. But I do want to hear your thoughts on what I can take back to him on top of the things that I've already suggested. Parliament, before it went into recess, was dealing with a number of things that I think are relevant to us in the Southwest. The first is the trade bills. We are looking at formulating those international trade relationships, although the trade bill that has just passed has been rolling over the EU arrangements that we had. We are going to be moving into a stage where we are going off to Canada, Australia, New Zealand, America to start formulating these new trade deals. If there are businesses in Brixham or anywhere in the area that we feel should be involved in those trade deals, I want to know, because we can put them on the trips, we can put them on the agendas, of the Secretary of State for Trade. We should be promoting everything we have. And I think that's one of the things I've been told by the Secretary of State. There's trust to go away and find which businesses might be appropriate to help add to the package that we want to do in terms of our trade deals. Obviously, fishing is going to be a really significant part of future free trade deals that we do, and especially as the Chinese market dwindles in, well, for one reason or another, the Chinese market is going to take a very different turn, whether or not they will want any of our product in the first place. So that's the first thing, is just to have this idea about these trade deals coming down the line. There are also, of course, the fisheries bill, the agriculture bill, which will have a huge impact on us. And the other side of it is what we are going to do to be able to improve connectivity. I think a number of you have messaged me over the fact that the road in and out of Brixham was blocked last week from that car crash. You know, this is incredibly difficult. If we've got poor connectivity, both in digital and transport, we are basically cutting ourselves off from the opportunities that we want to be able to present. And so I think we need to do something on this. I've been working with Kevin Foster, and we have a really united approach to being able to make sure we can get support for the whole of the Bay to look at reopening Churston and Gownton train stations, but also looking at what we can do to, I can see Susan throwing her hand up in the air in excitement here. But I think it's looking at these things in a way in which we can take cars off the road, also possibly take freight off the road, also use the sort of cabotage element of doing vessels that crisscross over the channel across the rest of England to transport goods. These are the things that we need to be thinking about so we can protect what we have. We've got an extraordinary port, which does an extraordinary amount for the fishing sector, is the most valuable fishing port in England. We should develop it. And we need to basically give them the space to do that. Everyone's agreed that they can do it. We need to it's my job to go and find the money for them. And that's what I want to do. So I really want to be able to make sure that we can look at this sort of connectivity side, look at the big ticket issues such as port development, but also encourage that new level of growth and opportunity that young people, I think, deserve in the area and want. And as a result, South Devon College has been very active as well with me in looking at what we can do in creating technical institutes that can train people up in some of the local skills that we need. It was new to me this week to go to the Ethics Centre at the top of the hill, as it were, to go and see all the businesses that are doing photonics and sort of incredibly technical optics there. And it is extraordinary what we are doing, and we are leading the rest of the country in South Devon. And we need to talk about this, and we need to get support for it, and we need to be able to make sure that we have a future workforce that can go into these jobs here, not necessarily just bringing people from outside. So there is a huge amount to do on that side. The only other things I wanted to say, and then I'm really keen to get to questions, is that we have that window of opportunity going into September and October. The only way we are going to get into a recovery in this country in a quick way is by getting people back to work, is by giving them the breathing space, and basically government giving the encouragement at all levels. And I mean that from local to county through to MPs, and working with local groups. I believe in localization. I believe in the strength of our localized markets and of what you do as business leaders. That's got to be developed, enhanced, supported, and it's got to come at every level. So there is no excuse from any councillor or county councillor. Of course, it's Torbay, so it's just that it's your councillors there, and me and Kevin, not to be helping out and picking up and sort of shouting from the rooftops about what we can do to support your sectors and your businesses, because we've got to get it done. And that is the only way we can get as close to a V-shaped or U-shaped recovery as possible. I am an eternal optimist. I believe that actually South Devon has got a fantastic chance of beating the trend of the rest of the country. I think we're innovative. I think it's not just about hospitality and tourism, which of course is an important part, but it's about all the other things we can do. So with a bit of luck and with your help, we can help that recovery come at a quicker rate than the rest of the country, and lead by example. The other two things that I have found extremely interesting, which is today the stats came out for how much money has been paid out for the 9.5 million people who have been put on furlough. And that was £31.7 billion. Now, I know there was a huge amount of disappointment for not extending the furlough scheme further, but there had to be a sort of a stop point. and we have to encourage people to go back to work. We can't sit at home forever. And we need all of that innovation and creativity that has made us sort of a leader in a whole load of different fields. So at that point, I'm going to shut up and listen to you guys and see if I can answer your questions and discuss what we might be able to do.
Thank you very much for that, Anthony. So yeah, if people just sort of let me know either by virtually raising your hand or actually raising your hand, and then we'll take, I can see Susan's already got her hand up. So Susan, if you go first.
Oh, you're on mute.
Hang on.
That's definitely £5 in the bucket.
Yeah.
You were talking about connectivity. I used to, on a regular basis, use Flybe to go to the City of London, where I had meetings and where we had groups and that. Every time I got on that flight at 6:30 in the morning, it was absolutely rammed. And people were going into work, into Canary Wharf and that. And the flight home in the evening at 5:30 was exactly the same. Now, Flybe obviously have pulled out. What is going to happen to all those people who work in the City of London who can now not travel from Exeter Airport to the city and back in a day? They can't take the train because half the day's gone in taking the train backwards and forwards. Is there anything that we can do to see if we can extend Exeter Airport and bring back the flights to City and other parts of the UK?
Yes, and I mean, this is what I think we can do. We need to look at a suspension of air passenger duty tax, and we need to encourage British Airways to use their idle planes to be able to do domestic flights. And that is about the only sort of thought I have had about how we can make it work. I'm going to be really controversial about this because I called out British Airways very early on because they behaved extremely badly, I think, to their employees.
Absolutely.
But I can understand why they have done this, because they are restructuring. And I think you will see Virgin, this is my sort of personal view, is that, you know, Virgin Atlantic has got some serious challenges. I have written to BA already asking whether or not they would look at taking on more domestic flights for exactly the reason that you make. You know, Exeter is an important airport, not just for passengers, but for freight as well. I think it's something we really need to be able to expand upon. I haven't had a response yet, but that letter only went last week. And I want to make sure when I do get a response, I will happily circulate it to this group and see what we can explore. But I would also imagine that it's a pretty good business opportunity. And I have also made the point to the Chancellor that I think an air passenger duty tax scrap would be very beneficial to domestic flights and domestic travel. And of course, this also goes with the fact that we do need to improve our rail links. And we are so far behind in the southwest, and I've been very disappointed that Stonehenge stuff has been deferred again because of archaeological finds. So we've got to push on further. But point taken on connectivity, and I'm sure someone's going to raise digital in a second because that's lacking as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so Dave, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I bet you didn't know, Anthony, that Brixham's got its own digital games company, did you? And,
I didn't.
You do now, right? And this is run by my son and myself. My son left university, moved down to Brixham to Lochay, and is building digital games that are designed to engage young people in the places that they live. So he's building games with Brixham as a backdrop. He's got some quite neat 3D demos of how it works. The problem that we're finding is getting Jake's business off the ground in terms of innovation funding, because the innovation funding in the UK is very much swayed towards brand new machines and bits and shiny things, and software is not really seen as an innovation, and it's very hard to break into that. And it's also, we think, something that should be developed in the region. So I don't have a specific to say to you, but I think in general, what we'd like to see is some investment in the software companies down here and the people that are actually trying to build software companies in the Southwest and recruit into them. And you know, our problems are not only finding investment, but actually finding somewhere to work. is the Epic Centre. Yeah, we loved it. We can't get in there. It's full and it's very expensive.
Yeah.
And in Brixham, we're struggling. There's most of the workspace stuff down here is full up.
There's a lot in this. What's the name of Jake's business?
It's called Zimply. It's XMPLI.
Thank you. I'd love to see more about it and learn more about it as well. I mean, one of the things, if you haven't had him come and speak to you, I think it's high time Lawrence Fruin came to speak to you, who's principal of South Devon College, because for a long time he's been sort of trying to push the South Devon College into a place where they create a university. I think that would be the wrong approach now. I think it's about creating a technical institute, and I would think that coding, software programming are all at the top of the list of things that we should be training people to do, because in South Devon College, not only have they got all the engineering facilities, they've got the computer coding, software development courses that are there. So I think you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right about Innovate UK, which tends to go for the very big, sexy projects. I say I must be the first person in the country ever to describe photonics as sexy, but it's there must be some truth to that. But I agree, there is a lack of funding in terms of seed funding to be able to help small businesses that are doing things that we are actually finessing. And so we are, my team and I are putting together a list of funds that are available that are sort of designed around helping and supporting businesses, which include investment. So I will circulate that when we have it. We should probably have it around September or October, because we're waiting on a few more things. But I want to learn more about your business and to be able to promote it as well, and to be able to take it to people in London. And I should hasten to add, if anyone is ever wanting to come up and see certain ministers to be able to discuss their product, to discuss how they might be able to get support, that is my job. I'm here to do this for you. So I want to hear from you, and I want to be able to make sure I can take those ideas to London and see if I can get you the support.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great. So how would we approach that? Because I think if you saw what Jake has done, and you actually saw Brixham in 3D with a game being played, it would capture your imagination, and then it would capture the imagination of other people. And he just needs that break.
Mm-hmm. Understood. Well, why don't I put my email on the chat, and then everyone can see it, and it's direct to me anyway, and then we can book a time when we're allowed to actually be in the same room as one another and come and see it. But I'd absolutely love to see it, Dave. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I muted myself. David next then. All right, thank you.
First of all, I'd like to say hello to Anthony Mangnall, because he and I have been corresponding just recently on local bus issues, and one telephone call as well. So I think it would be right and proper to thank you for all the work you've been doing on that. We know we've had partial success, deferral of loss of buses until 31st of March next year, but there's a lot of work to be done with Torbay and presumably Kevin Foster as well, to ensure that we get a good and continuation and sustainable bus service right across the bay. Because of course, it's all very well talking about the wider connections, but if our local people can't get into their own town centre, then we've got problems to start with. So thanks for that. And I know you're coming to the town council meeting on Thursday, and no doubt we'll be developing this further. I want to stick with the connectivity aspect though, because I was pleased, like Susan there, when you mentioned about Churston and Gampton Station, working on that. Within the neighbourhood plan, which you may well be familiar with, especially towards the end there are some very good ideas that we worked on over a number of years, and I always felt that the strongest one of all of the ideas was some form of enhanced park and ride. Multiple services operating out of the sort of Churston Gampton area, therefore reducing the number of cars that need to come into town and getting the roads clogged up, because the in and out is very difficult, as we all discovered again last week. Do you think that there's some way in which within this Churston and Gampton idea of potentially reopening the station, that there's also a wider possibility of looking at the other ideas that exist for developments that can basically open up the area.
So I'm going to return and say thank you to you for everything you've done in terms of support on the bus side of things, because you've been at it a lot longer than I have, and so I'm very grateful for the insight and the help and everything you are doing, because we've got a fight on our hands, and we're ready to go. In terms of park and rides, listen, everything should be on the table. If you look at the model that is in Dartmouth or in Salcombe, they have a park and ride at the top of towns, and it's meant to alleviate the burden. Well, of course, right now, the park and rides are not operating. Now, that is obviously down to the current crisis, but I do think we need to be open to be able to look at that model, and to also, buses are very much in a chicken and egg scenario. People go, oh, I don't want to get on one because it's not frequent enough. And the bus companies say, we're not getting enough passengers. It's not worth it financially. And so you don't quite know which one should be coming first. But actually, the bus companies need to have the faith, and they need to be able to provide the services to then encourage the people to be able to get on it. The less cars in the centre of Brixham would be fantastic. And streamlining the way we move freight in and out of Brixham is also got to be hugely under consideration. So that is a model that absolutely should be looked at. And to be honest, Kevin and I are totally aligned with you on making sure that sort of the internal transport links are good. We don't have trains at the moment. We've got buses, and that's it. So, you know, we're not dealing with very much. So it really needs the support. And I've been very frustrated that the Rural Mobility Fund or the Restart Your Bus Fund, there was no application for Brixham. And that was really unbelievably disappointing that we didn't get that and didn't get the money that we could have used to be able to not only enhance some of those routes, but support them further.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because you stated that confidentially in your letter to me, and I've been working behind the scenes asking questions via the town clerk to the financial people at Torbay Council, because I was equally disappointed to hear that they didn't apply for some of their funding, which we could have quite easily have pushed towards the efforts we were making in Brixham alone. So,
This is
very disappointed in that, and no doubt we'll hear more about this on Thursday.
There is absolutely, and I think I think also one of the things, I'm in the mindset that we should be put every bid that comes up when any government or any part of government announces a bid, we should be submitting something. Because the more we ask, the more we will get. We're not always going to get everything. And I am firmly of the belief that the Southwest has been left behind for too long. And it's no good saying, oh, well, look, we've won a whole load of seats in the North, and therefore we've got to shore out sport. Well, absolute rubbish. We've got to make sure that our coastal and rural communities are actually supported with the infrastructure we deserve. We are a powerhouse of this country, and it needs to be reflected in the policies we get. So anything that is going, I will put bids in. Even if I have, as much time as it takes, we all need to be in the mindset of doing that. And if we can get it right, then we will get more money in the long run, and that will be a benefit to us all.
One last thing, Anthony, in view of what you've just said, may I share your letter to me with my fellow councillor on Brixham Town Council, now that you've stated that publicly?
You may, yes.
Thank you.
Thanks. I think Richard's got his hand up, so we'll go to Richard next.
Well, we've forgotten Lynn as well beneath, but we'll get there.
Lynn, I'll come to you next.
Oh, you're on mute.
Just following on from what you've just been discussing with David, I think a simple solution that would really help Brixham businesses, something we've been trying with the Brixham Council and with the Chamber for many years, is to tidy up our central car park and to have some clear directions to the car park that's by the breakwater that is hardly used. We need more parking. Parking is being taken away from us for the fishing, which is quite understandable, but that would be such an easy solution. If we could just get permission, for example, I'll go and do it myself, paint that eyesore as people approach Brixham for the first time. It's where you pay your money and everything. It's just a block. It just needs a lick of paint and a welcome sign on it, and then tidy up the signage generally. I don't think it would cost a lot, and it would really help the businesses in Brixham.
Listen, I'll come and paint it with you.
Thank you.
I'll happily do that. But listen, I mean, when it comes to car parks and that sort of structure, a lot of it will be down to Torbay Authority. But I have a call with them every week, so I will raise it, absolutely. And yes, I think you're right. You know, we need to streamline it. We need to make it efficient. We need to make people have the opportunity to park outside of town and use the buses, because that's a nicer way of doing it, and a cheaper way of doing it perhaps as well. So totally agree.
Now, while we've got that perhaps pause where they really should commit to help businesses, we might at last get that through. And the belly bins, I'm going mute.
I think Richard.
Anthony, our high streets have been in a state of malaise for many years up and down the country. Many businesses face unprecedented competition from online businesses, some of them with very questionable tax responsibilities. And the very last thing any of them needed was the recent COVID lockdown. Does central government have any plans, policies to help revitalise high streets other than a sort of a Darwinian survival of the fittest sink or swim?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I hope that the small grants, the discretionary grants, the 25k grants, the 50k loans will be enough to be able to get people through this. But you're absolutely right. My optimism in the Southwest stems from the fact, and especially in South Devon, that we are so fortunate to have so many independent chains. Because if you were standing in Cirencester, Swindon, Bristol, I know they're bigger examples than many of the towns that we have, they would have a lot harder, they're going to have a lot harder time because they're linked to these sort of chain side of things. The government is discussing, and I think it's already been in the papers, is this idea of an online tax. And I have to say, I'm edging increasingly more in favor of it. Because it seems to me deeply and grossly unfair that Amazon can get away with not contributing its fair share of tax while our high streets suffer. Now, this was also the point that a couple of weeks ago, there was relaunching our sort of high streets fund, which the Southwest did bid into. We got one deal in Torbay. It annoys me to no end that Brixham lost out. There were a number of ready sort of deals put in, including port development, but also actually helping sort of smarten up the high street in Brixham. So I think we need to be in the sort of mindset of an online tax wouldn't be a bad thing, using the funds that are already there, because everything the Chancellor announced in his budget at the start of this year, Stronger Towns Fund, High Street funds, all of that, the money is still there. It hasn't been diverted towards COVID. It is the money that's still there. So we need to be able to get that injection of cash into the area. I also think there is a value in this change in the planning process, where houses can be shops and shops can be houses, because I think that gives you the opportunity to actually be quite flexible with what you use your buildings for, and how you might be able to cultivate small businesses and to be able to prevent people who are doing, it could be arts and crafts to designing software to teaching people in those sort of centres. I think we are going to have to be really imaginative about what we do with our high street, but give people the flexibility. I have to say, again, it goes back to the thing, when you look at Totnes or Brixham or Kingsbridge, you know, our high streets are remarkably different to anywhere else in the country. And I think that's something I really want to hold on to, and I really want to be able to support little businesses to be able to go in there. And I hope that that money is going to be enough to get people at least through the next few months, and to have been able to sort of weather those 3 months of lack of business, and then we can look what further steps we can take. But as I said at the very beginning, you know, you've got a Chancellor who understands small businesses. He helped small businesses before he was in politics. I hope he's going to be able to deliver in his spending review further measures to be able to help the high street. But I don't want this to be the death of the high street. So if you've got any ideas, Richard, I'm all ears.
No quick fix, I'm afraid.
No.
David, you got your hand up. Do you want to come in?
Yeah, I wonder if I can just pivot to a couple of questions to you, Matt, to do with chamber stuff, although Anthony may also have an opinion on these things. You haven't mentioned yet that you are one of the people working with Brixham Town Council's Coronavirus Recovery Plan group, which we are very, very pleased with and glad you are. You also didn't mention that in the new recovery plan by Torbay, I think due to some of the lobbying we've been doing from the Brixham end, we have managed to get rather more mention now of Brixham into that plan than was hitherto there before. So I think it's important to say that, because previously it was all about the fish industry and nothing else. And then I want to come to the point that Lynn was making, and I know Alex emailed me some weeks ago about solar powered bins, and everyone I think here knows how many years I've been interested in this particular subject since Nigel Macon first brought it to the chamber. I would say this: you've mentioned that you'll be working with Torquay and Paynton. If we are going to pressure Torbay into introducing solar powered bins right across Torbay, which are clearly environmentally the right things to do and years behind schedule, then we need to build momentum for it. And I think it's through the chambers coming together and then garnering the support of the wider community that we can turn that pressure on, because Torbay say within their own documentation that they wish to improve the environmental aspect of the area. And that is clearly both a money saving and very cost-effective way of doing it, and of course has the desired results. So I don't know if you want to comment on that, Matt, and Anthony on the second bit.
Yeah, so just quickly on the first bit, yeah. So when the first draft of the regeneration plan came out, you're quite right. There was a vague proposal to improve town centres across Torbay, but Brixham wasn't individually mentioned. And then elsewhere there was the Torquay Town Centre plan, which was individually mentioned. There was nothing in Paynton mentioned either, I have to say. Now, the reason why that happened was because there was a shovel-ready scheme ready to go in Torquay, and there wasn't in Brixham. I mean, Town Council did this as well, but what we were saying to them, that if this is going to be a plan going forward, it doesn't matter if there's a shovel-ready scheme or not. There has to be a commitment to look at the town centre of Brixham, being the car park mainly, but generally. So on that regeneration plan, there is now a commitment to finalise a scheme. It doesn't mean that it will happen. It will just mean that they will finalise a scheme that they can go forward with and then bid for money or funding. Because at the moment, we haven't got a scheme in Brixham in place. So you can't go and bid for money for a scheme you don't know what it is yet. It just so our first stage is that in the next few months, Torbay Council is going to push more, I'm hoping, to finalise what they're going to do in Brixham. Now, we've got to be a part of that as well, I have to say, because in the past, what's tended to happen is plans have been put forward, not all of them great, but some people in Brixham liked them, some people didn't, and we've given very mixed messages. So I think we need to think about it carefully. It's been like it for a long time, that area, and we need to look at the proposals objectively and maybe find one that we can get behind. So I think that is a positive move for the regeneration plan, and that is what we've been doing behind the scenes, just to sort of put our hands up and say, you know, we need to be included in this as well. And there is a real commitment to do things across Torbay, I have to say. So I mean, that's probably what David was getting at, and we have been working with Brixham Town Council as well, and I think those the joined up the bits are working really well. As I said, there is going to be a formal process soon. It's probably going to revolve around the business forum, where the chairs of the individual chambers will sit on the business forum exec group. That's not finalised yet, so we'll see what happens, but that's one of the ideas. That will give a formal forum for us to talk to each other, and yes, put forward things like solar powered bins and more greenery in the town centres, because we can go with a unified voice. Yeah, I think that probably covers what David mentioned. I don't know if Anthony, you want to.
I mean, one of the things that I think is, and whoever said that it's not just about fish is absolutely right. But we can't also walk away from the fact that the value of every pound that goes through Brixham Fish Market and the knock-on impact that has in the town in terms of gross value added is extraordinary. They do have a plan. in terms of development. And the Prime Minister came and saw it last year. And I remember him clearly saying we should build the Northern Breakwater Arm and we should be able to help expand that port so we could welcome more vessels in. And that is something I am bringing. I mean, I saw the Harbour Master yesterday. I am bringing him up to London along with the Brixham Trawler Agent guys and perhaps some of the people from Torbay Authority to say now is the time for investment into Brixham. Because sometimes, and I'm not saying this is always the case, sometimes I feel that Brixham is sometimes a little bit forgotten in the sense that it is a golden egg and it is extremely valuable to the whole of the bay, and it is also a working port. So we need to be, and I agree with Matthew that actually there is a lockstep approach in terms of making sure there is, when we go out and fly the flag, it is always in a unified manner. But I want to be able to take those businesses in the area from Brixham, because I don't have all of Torbay, and make sure they're getting the attention they deserve. Because if we can get that right, I would have liked to have seen the ready-made sort of the shovel-ready project. I would have loved them to have put, and I did ask if they might be able to consider the port, but for a number of reasons, it just didn't fit in on that bid. But we've got to use these big projects and these big ideas to make some waves and get some attention. And then on the environmental side, I think this is what we have in every piece of legislation that's gone through since I was elected in December. There is an environmental tinge to it, whether it's the Ag Bill, the Fishing Bill, the Trade Bill, the Environment Bill, for obvious reasons. There are a whole host of things that we should do, and I think the opportunity again is really for South Devon, for all of Devon, to serve as the example for the rest of the country for what we can do, whether it's planting more trees or putting solar panels on industrial roofs. We should be looking at all of it and exploring it, because I think actually the sustainability that it can have in terms of putting money back into the local environment is massive. And that would be a really valuable thing to do for our communities.
I see Dave's got his hand up, so do you unmute yourself yet?
Yeah, sorry to button again. Just one other thing, Anthony, is I'm a director of the Shelstone Pool special interest community company that runs the free seawater pool that you'll know in the town. And you may not know that we've not been able to open this year. And that's because of a number of reasons. One is the experience in trying to make a free pool work within the Swim England COVID guidelines. It's just not going to happen. And the other are the logistics and the costs of lifeguarding the pool and getting it set up and renovating it. And as an organisation, we are entirely volunteer run and very, very poorly funded. And that is a jewel in Brixham's town. Yeah. So we need help. We need some specific expertise to come and guide the team that are running this pool for free. And we also need investment in that pool. I'm not going to hide from that. Is if we don't get it, it's going to crumble away. So this is something else that I think that you could help us with, is raising the profile of the pool, not only locally, but nationally, to make people aware of what this is. It's a unique seawater pool. That is part of the heritage of this town, part of the heritage of the country, and is in danger of remaining closed permanently.
I mean, I'll come and see it next week if you'd like, on Monday or Tuesday. So yeah. I'm in Brixham on Monday morning. If you're happy
to meet you down there and show you the problems that we're having and talk you through some of the things that we need, and it would be very useful indeed.
Perfect. We'll put in Monday. I'll get my team to get in touch with you, and then we'll find a time that works for you.
That's great. Thanks.
Anybody else got something that they would like to bring up? Alex?
Hello. Yeah, actually, I think Nikki Homiad would like to speak, but she's not got very good signal, so she couldn't put a video on, so you couldn't see her hand. But I'd like to speak after her, maybe.
Yeah, fine.
Yes, thank you. I've sent you several messages, Matthew. You had not acknowledged them.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. You're busy. Yeah, I apologise. The signal here is really rubbish. Which so any improvement to digital technology would be welcomed. Although we had several weeks of disruption here while Virgin was putting new cables up the road. So I actually welcome the. When that is ready. I just wanted to introduce ourselves and just to say that we based ourselves here to build Europe's largest mussel farm. Brixham isn't just about fishing, it's also about aquaculture. But for us, Brexit with a no deal would be an absolute disaster. it may be fine for the fishing industry, but aquaculture is a very different thing. And I would welcome the opportunity to discuss this with you in Brixham, Anthony, and just to talk to you about some of the issues that we experienced. We're getting quite a bit of feedback about the shellfish pier that was built for us, or for us and for other people, but it's been made to be virtually unusable, which is another issue. But there are several things which I would welcome the opportunity to discuss with you. So I'll send you an email, and hopefully we can set up a meeting and have a brief chat. We had several meetings with Sarah when she was the MP. So she was aware of things that were going on, but it would be good to bring you up to speed as well.
Would absolutely love to, Nikki, and anything around sort of aquaculture. I'm very keen to learn from you about what further steps we can take. So thank you. Absolutely love to. Name your time, and we'll sit down and come and see what you're doing as well.
Perfect. Okay, we look forward to it. Thank you. Thanks.
Was Alex? Alex, were you going?
Yeah. Yeah. Hi. Thanks. So it's very nice to meet you, Anthony. Thank you for coming. And I just thought I'd give you a little update of what our business has felt, and then my thoughts on what maybe would help our business and maybe other businesses through the winter. So I run a cafe up on Berry Head, just outside Brixham, and as a result, I don't experience a lot of the problems that our other members experience from the town centre itself. I have a whole separate set of problems which are not really within your remit due to the nature reserve. So obviously, like everyone, we were the year was just it's been a very difficult year, and the start of the year was hit by two issues. One was a complete loss of income, and one was a severe cash crisis. So I've made use of a lot of the different schemes that are available. The cash finally was sorted out when we got the bounce back loan, which was fantastic. Up until then, cash was really a headache for many businesses. My staff, so we have 23 staff, including quite a few of which are part-time, so maybe about 11 full-time equivalents in our business. Everyone was furloughed, and I have to say the furlough scheme has been a wonderful safety blanket for me as an employer. It really took the vast majority of the stress out of the situation when coronavirus lockdown hit. And a lot of the staff are still furloughed, but we are bringing people back now. We've now got two teams. One team works 4 days a week, and then the other team works 3 days a week. That's about 12 staff returns from furlough now. The only issue I had with furlough was that we were just also in the budget, we're given a very generous employment allowance this year. I think it's £4,000 towards national insurance. That will be pretty much gone by the end of the furlough scheme, because the furlough is set up to eat up the employment allowance itself, rather than allow us to keep the employment allowance, which I thought was a shame. We've also made use of obviously we got a grant, and we are extremely pleased about the reduction in VAT. That in itself, if things continue as they have been for the last couple of weeks, then that is a game changer for the profitability of our business this year. So really, really grateful to the government for doing that. It's more than I envisaged would be put our way. We're also going to be making use of the Eat Out to Help Out scheme from Monday, and I don't know the details yet, but I will try to make use of the job support schemes that were announced a couple of weeks ago, once we know more about them, probably for next spring and onwards. And so all those things together basically have really cushioned the blow of what was going to be a very difficult financial year. And we are, if things continue as they are, so the other things that we've got in our favour is there's a lot of tourists around, which is wonderful. And our business obviously is in a very lucky position that we've got loads of space outside and plenty of space inside as well. Although when we try to do 2 metre social distancing inside, it's still very hard. So right now we have not actually got any indoor seating, but that will be the next thing. Once we feel more comfortable that there's no spike after the tourists have all been around, that'll be one of the next things that we try to expand into, just with it'll be a small number of tables. So all that together means that right now, if things continue as they are, then we probably will actually make a small profit this financial year, which ends in February for us, which is an astonishment, given I was expecting to lose maybe £25,000 this year. So I'm very grateful to the government for all that help. However, just got to think that there's a lot of impacts just from our one business. We've had no hiring this year, and we've got a whole group of staff who are going to be getting no work experience this year. And it's generally the ones who've not come back are the ones who are shielding, or the ones who are younger and are not yet specialised in one area. So the chefs are back, the baristas are back, the managers are back, but I've got 6, 7 school kids who are not working at all yet still. And it's for them, presumably this will be similar to many businesses. It's just going to be a generation of lost work experience for that age group. And once we get to the furlough starting to cost us money in September, then I'm probably going to take them off furlough as well. So then they'll probably count as a job loss. They didn't earn enough to qualify for the £1,000 for the funding that would come in February anyway. And I won't actually kick them out, but they'll be on to a contract where they just work every now and again, hopefully through the autumn if things do continue to pick up. But it's certainly not going to be the regular weekly shift that they would have had. So that's basically where we are. Overall, it's not a negative picture compared to what it could have been, but it's not the same scale business as what we had last year. And this is all assuming it continues as it has been. So if we were to get a long period of bad weather or some more flare-ups, which lead to a local shutdown or to a loss of confidence from tourists, then that things could quickly go completely wrong again. And of course, we don't know what's going to happen in 2021. Everyone's talking about this being just this year, but this year's ticking on, isn't it? And there's still no sign of things being back to normal. And I don't know if they will be by Easter or not. So fingers are crossed, but there's challenges there. Just thinking about for the winter, for myself, then we always cut down the number of staff we have for the winter months anyway. What will be awkward for me this year is what about the staff who are shielding? We've got 2 in our team, and obviously they've not yet returned to work. They're furloughed. I will continue to furlough them at the moment through September and October, which means that we'll be paying a bit of the money towards them. Into the winter, then are we going to continue paying them, or are they going to lose their jobs? There must be many people across the country who are in that position, but I would treat them very differently to the people who just who choose not to come back to work, or who are just enjoying lying at home and going out for walks in the sunshine. So that's on the staffing side. That's one challenge for me. Also, just thinking about this area in general, Brixham is an extremely difficult place to find winter work, and a lot of our staff who have joined us, we're unusual that we do actually open year round, and a number of our staff work with us for that reason, because they do know that they get relatively not too many hours in the summer, and then they get plenty of hours through the winter. But there's an awful lot of places that just totally close, and people work for 8, 9, 10 months, and then 8 or 9 months maybe, and then they have the winter off. This year, a lot of those people will be in a difficult financial position if they've not worked much this year. And there's nothing to pick up the slack there. It's not like they're choosing not to work at that time. There's just no jobs. So maybe some kind of support that goes to individual people, not through businesses, because they wouldn't benefit from that. Or maybe if there's some way that some job creation schemes can be applied, and thinking about seasonal towns like Brixham, for example, all this insurance or this insulation that's being funded by the government. There must be people within Brixham who would work, as a barman or as a waiter or as a lifeguard or whatever. People who would be physically able to go and do more physical work, such as putting insulation in if they knew what they were doing. And then for my business, and for businesses like mine, I mean, I feel like I'm in a much luckier position than many of the restaurants and cafes in this area because of our location. But restaurants and cafes and bars, I think, are going to be financially struggling. The VAT is a great help. You said maybe that can be extended. That would be fantastic. But if it couldn't, then maybe some other kind of financial support. I feel like the £10,000 or £25,000 was a very blunt instrument that had to be come up with very, very quickly. I would have thought one that makes sense is for rent to be covered, because people that don't fall into the VAT category, or those businesses who have been too new or didn't have premises. No, I guess they've got premises. Anyway, I feel like rent would be a pretty clear way a fair way to give money to people in a justified way, and it would be scaled up based on how the on how big the premises were. I think that's basically everything I had for my own business. Is there any questions?
Alex, I mean, I'm really pleased to hear that you have benefited in the ways you have, and I take on board everything you say about the challenges, especially with staff. One of the things I have found, and this is why groups like this are so important, is that I did this 2 weeks ago with Salcombe and Kingsbridge, and someone on one side of the phone said, I'm going to have to let 6 of my staff go, and someone on the other screen said, well, actually, I need 6 staff. So we've got to get into the habit of sharing this information. So I actually know that there are hotels and cafes in South Hams that are looking for staff. So I think, Matthew, perhaps you and I can talk about how we can link each other up with or I can link you all up with the different chambers of commerce and different groups that are out there, so we can create our own network of support that is going to help people in the area to work in local businesses. I know that sounds quite idealistic, but you know, there's a good example of it happening, and we should, if there is the opportunity to do it, we should definitely do it. The second thing is that we've got this spending review coming out. The Chancellor is going to be making it all about jobs. I think there will be further announcements in it that will be helping those who are shielding, but also those who are just entering into the jobs market. So stand by for that. And the other is actually retraining. That is a big drive, which is actually giving people the flexibility to be able to retrain in the jobs that they're doing. And South Devon College has got a role to play in that, but it's also giving people the support to be able to go and retrain and covering those costs. So I take that on board as well. And you're absolutely right about sort of, you know, if we're going to put £10,000 towards insulation and support and that sort of things, then, well, we need the workforce to be able to do it. So how are we going to go about it? So I'll take that one back and see if I can get some clearer points on it. As for the VAT, I mean, it's something I really want. I really do believe that a continuation along what the rest of Europe is doing and many other countries at 5% is the sensible thing to do. However, the Treasury want revenue receipts, and I think they are in a position. I need to go back to them with something that's going to raise them some revenue. And I am looking at different things that won't impact the businesses, but it's rejigging of things. But I do think if we can continue with the 5%, then we'll look at this. I think we should be under no illusions about the hospitality and tourism sector. Depending on which metric you follow, it's between 6 and 2 million jobs in the UK. So it's 6 million indirect and direct, apparently, if you take both those sectors together. It is vastly important. It is worth something in the region of about £350 billion a year to the UK. So I don't think anyone is under any sort of illusion of the importance that it has to our economy and making sure it can survive. So I will push on that. The rent side, I'd love to say that that's something that's probably going to happen. I just don't see it being realistic. It becomes so complicated with private landlords and whatever other form of landlord there is, that I can't see it coming about. They'd be more likely to announce and this is not saying it happened, but you'll be more likely to find another grant situation than rent freezes or anything like that, just because of the way in which property ownership is structured. But there we are. I take on board everything you said. I agree with most of it. I'm glad you benefited, but I'm actually really conscious of winter. I hope that domestic tourism is going to sweep straight through to November this year, and then we'll get a Christmassy boom, because I think Devon is lovely in all weather. So we need to perhaps persuade people of that. The other thing is, I should just to point this out, is there is a Devon Economic Recovery Group, which did come up through Devon County Council, and I sit on it. And one of the points it is trying to do is basically bolster the Devon brand, because I think it is the biggest wasted opportunity we have. The bloody Cornish have done it better than us, and I will be the last person to allow the Cornish to beat us at anything. So it's time that we utilise the Devon brand in its fullest extent. And cafes like yours at that incredible site, I know it, is something that we should be really proud and to help promote, and I'll do everything I can. But I'll feed all of this back in. That's why I'm taking notes.
Yeah, thanks. There's a few members who are not on the call as well, who I know would appreciate me raising their situation with you. So there's a small number of private charter boats within Torbay. I think one or two of them have written to you, I think, because they've been in the discretionary grant phase from Torbay Council. They've been very happy. They've got each had £2,500 for their business. But of course, they're in touch with other charter boats up and down the coast, and they feel to be very, very equivalent in terms of things like turnover and capacity. And several councils have given £10,000 as a discretionary grant. We promised that we would raise that with everyone that we could. So there we go.
So I'm going to be a bit unfair to Torbay Authority on this one. So I fought tooth and nail to get it on both Torbay and South Hams, and I got one out of two.
Yeah.
South Hams did, in their discretionary grant, go for the charter boats to be able to support them with sizable grants, and it just didn't translate in the same way for Torbay. But to be fair to the council, they were sort of looking at it different ways, and they hoped that the tourism trade would sort of be able to boost them up. But I'm really sorry, because I just couldn't get it. I really pushed for it, but I couldn't get it. So it's not forgotten, and this is a sector, by the way. I actually there needs to be a fundamental change about the way council tax is paid, business rates are paid. I've been very upset to see that there have been second homeowners in the area who have basically been claiming business rates, who've been given £10,000 grants, while the boat charterers got nothing. It cannot go on. I've raised it multiple times. I tried to stop it being paid out at the very beginning. Both Torbay and South Hams were holding off for as long as possible, but eventually they had to pay, and that's no fault of their own. It's an oversight of the legislation that is in place. I'm speaking to Jessie Norman later on this week, who's the Treasury Minister on this issue, but it is time that we redress this balance and made sure that people are paying their fair share of council tax and what is due to, living in the area. And then we review businesses that are on the water, which don't pay business rates, but have huge overheads. There has to be a balancing act here. Right now it's very unequal. So while I've let them down, I promise that I'll try and do better on the future stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm sure on their behalf, thank you very much.
Right, let's go to Susie next. Susan? You're okay, you're unmuted.
No, you've now muted yourself. Susan, you've muted yourself.
Oh, that's it. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Jolly good. As you know, our educational business went from a large turnover to zero on the 2nd of March when Europe went to lockdown. Basically, they stopped all educational trips. Educational trips are still banned at the moment. We have no business at all. We're not likely to have any business till 2021. However, one of our agents from France today emailed me and said, along with the problem of COVID, what the French press is now putting out is that people from Europe will need passports to come into the UK because of Brexit from January. Is that true, or is that something that's not been decided and just something the French press are putting out?
It is true, and I wrote to Kevin Foster about it 3 weeks ago because it was raised to me by English and Totnes, and I'm trying to see what can be done on this because it seems, my personal view, and this is not, my personal view is that it seems very strange to be able to restrict students that are coming over here who have previously been able to travel on ID cards, not passports, because a disproportionate amount of people in Europe don't have passports. Kevin Foster is my immigration minister. I've written to him. I'm waiting to hear back from him on this. As soon as I have the answer, I will let you know and come through, because I just think it's a further block and it makes things very difficult. And given the value of what people spend in language schools, tour groups, educational visits in local communities, it seems very bizarre to sort of push this. And also, if I can put it this way, I'm not making them sound like prisoners, but the flight risk is not there. So, it's not a case where you suddenly find yourself creating a channel to illegal migration. So it's, once I have the answer, I will come back to you. Have I frozen?
Hello, you were frozen then.
Oh, hello. In which case I just said I'll come back to you when I've got a response to this letter, but I should be getting something fairly soon.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any more questions? Looking around. Oh, Aaron.
Hello there, Anthony. So I just thought while we had a gap there, I'd just throw myself in. I was in the Navy a few years ago. I've left that job. I'm trying to start. I've been in career of accountancy now for 4 years. I work in Goughton. So concerns for me going forward is, when I left the Navy, we had Brexit, and now we've got COVID, and so it's really about in Brixham. I've got to try and get out there to go to places, and I mean, my boss can't believe me when I turn up at 9:30 and say, "Oh, I'm late because the road was blocked," and he says, "You only live 2 miles away." So that what you were talking about earlier, I know you've probably had hundreds of messages about connectivity and the roads, but for me that's a major issue, because the job I want at the moment, I'm not able to get in Brixham, but I want to live in Brixham. So major concern for me is just that the road can get shut and I can be stranded only 2 miles away and have to consider traipsing across the fields in my leather brown shoes. So yeah, that was one. And also, I mean, with talking about Rishi Sunak and going forward, I mean, I think while the government can still borrow under 1% and keep printing those 30-year gilts, then talking of putting up taxes and trying to recover that big hit we've taken from COVID should really be on the back burner until we feel confident in the future.
So I listen, take your point on connectivity. This is something everyone talks about it all the time. We need to all club our heads together, and I mean, in terms of local government, national government, and get on with it. And I have to say, lots of the road maintenance people have been out and about over the whole of this crisis, sort of filling in potholes. It is amazing. You might not believe it, but I think 80% of the potholes have actually been filled in. I mean, I seem to have seen the remaining 20% all the time. But there is, this is the whole point. If we can do that in the 3 months, we also need to be able to look at the other big projects that are going to change things and make things better for the residents. It's all very well catering for tourism and visitors and all of that side of things, but we must make sure that Brixham is a viable economic sort of hub in the future. There's no reason it shouldn't be, but it frustrates me that you're saying, well, actually, I live 2 miles outside of it. It's difficult to get into work. It could restrict my job prospects. That is something we've got to address. And then on the tax thing, you're absolutely right. I think the point is that we do need to focus on what steps we would take. And so, say an online tax towards Amazon, towards the sort of eBay things. That's the stuff I think we should start sort of tackling. And then where we have sort of we've gone forward, but it's got to be done in a balanced way. This shouldn't be about penalising people. I am a conservative after all. I believe that low taxation creates greater growth. So it won't be surprising to see that I don't want to see high taxation on either individuals or businesses, but I do think there will have to be some element for how we can do this. But and you are right, of course, it's cheap to borrow at the moment. But at some point we're going to want to get the deficit down, because as we look like the similar age, I'm 30, so you and I are going to be a long time in the job market. With the deficit's got to be brought down at least in our lifetime. So, but yeah.
Okay, yeah. Thanks, Anthony.
Thanks, Aaron. Good luck.
Thank you.
Has anybody else got a point they want to raise? Yeah, David?
Yeah, I just wanted to say to Anthony nationally and you locally, Matt. The Prime Minister was, I think, refreshingly honest at the weekend that mistakes have been made along the way, although we shouldn't get too critical of that because of the unprecedented nature. That's one inquiry should be looking at later on. But I would like to hear some reassurance or the message to go back that if there is any major recurrence, especially this winter, that this time that we've learned the lessons, whatever they are considered to be, and that we plan accordingly, And on the local mat, we talked, Tracy and I, that's the town clerk, and I talked about this today. I think it's important that within the recovery plans that we're looking at, that we also think carefully about what happens if things do turn the other way. And I think we do need to be building that into our planning. So that's just some comments I'd like to make.
One for you or me, Matthew?
You can take that one.
David, listen, I agree. Yes, mistakes have definitely been made. I mean, let's be under no illusions. I think we have been very lucky here in the Southwest. There's no doubt about that. I toured round the Nightingale Exeter Hospital a week ago, and I mean, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible, and the preparations they've gone into it has been fantastic. And you know, I hope it doesn't have to be used for COVID, because that means, you know, we'll be back in a very dire situation. But it's also very welcome to see that site, because it can help clear the backlog with all of our hospitals and for those who need sort of scanning and appointments and all of that sort of things, which is fantastic. The lessons, I think, have been learned, which is why we're sort of looking at keeping these Nightingale hospitals in place. I think it's also really important that we make sure we get the testing sites either in a mobile form or operating outside of GP surgeries. We've got to prepare for the flu vaccine as we go into winter. So all of these things have now been sort of identified as the next steps as we go into the winter. And certainly, I think everyone I know who has, and I'm sure it's the same for all of your group, has had to step up to the plate in one way or another to make sure that we are dealing with the issue at hand. And I hope that's going to make sure that we've learned our lesson from the first time. Certainly, I feel it will do. And certainly from the Prime Minister's point of view, I mean, I think he's got more of a handle on it. I think he's recovered, because he hasn't been on top form for the last few weeks. And we've got to keep it on a wing and a prayer that we don't get a second wave in a significant way in the UK. It's meant to be optimistic, by the way. I'm very optimistic about the things that this country can do. I hasten to add. So, I mean, you know, if I can, because unless there are any other questions, I just want to make the point that I think we've got a fantastic portfolio of businesses, of opportunities that we can do in the Southwest. But it only works if you can help me platform them, and Matthew and I will work as hard as we possibly can to be able to get the right information to you and to get you the support you need. But I will do these calls as much as you want, and my door and telephone line and email is open to you all at any time. So if there's anything you need, then please don't hesitate to ask. My job is to represent you and to support you. So say the word.
I think we're sort of coming towards the end now. I think most of the things that I had written down that I was going to bring up have already been brought up, which is good. It means I didn't have to ask you lots of questions. The only couple of things that I've got is I think the feedback tonight, as you can see, without doubt, I think the grants and the furlough and all the different help that's been out there, and it has been an unprecedented time, and I think businesses have appreciated it, and there's always going to be winners and losers, but in the whole it has worked pretty well. I know that this has already been said to the Treasury quite a lot, but it's worth mentioning again because it's something that gets mentioned to me quite a lot. The one group that seems to have been missed out completely is owners of owner-managed small companies, who draw their money from the company via small wage and then dividends. Now, this part of the country, we've got a lot of small owner-managed companies, and I know that representation has already been made through other channels, but I think it's worth just saying that again, that I don't think it's beyond the realm to do something there. And the other thing else,
I'm jumping in on this one.
Yeah.
One of the it's been a constant source of frustration from the get-go, because we've all seen it, and you know, from businesses that were, you know, doing really well and people were taking dividends, but also from those that were just starting up and didn't have the records. I don't know what the answer is, but certainly a number of us have written in on it a number of times and spoken.
Yeah, and that was the other thing, obviously, self-employed people that started too late and they've missed out. So that's the two sort of areas that we've missed. The other thing that I've been starting to get at, probably the last couple of weeks actually, is I think this happens whenever there's job losses or potential job losses, what you often find is there's a upturn in the number of small businesses that start up. So I've been approached to see if I know anywhere whether there's grants or help for startup businesses. Now, I think whatever we do, there are going to be some job losses around the Bay. We've heard tonight that I am positive as well, but there are going to be some. And if those people starting their own businesses, if there's some help for them, I think that would be a really positive thing to include as well. So I think that's probably just the two areas that hadn't been mentioned.
So I will circulate a list of what sort of support's there. I would also like to, I mean, what would be really helpful is doing this as well in September, October, and to coincide with when the furloughing scheme is ticked down, and to see where we are. Because the other thing I'm very conscious of is making sure that people are aware of the services that are provided by Citizens Advice. We've got to be joined up in this and to be able to make sure that people have the support. I know Susan does some extraordinary work with the food bank. I want to be able to help all of those who are using the food bank, but also to make sure they're aware of all the support that is there for individuals, because let's not also be under any illusions that there will be an uptick in people claiming universal credit. So I want to make sure that we can catch everyone in the safety net that we have provided, but also to help those small businesses. And certainly listening to the radio today, that was all I heard about people saying, well, actually, now's the time for me to go and set up my own business. And I think we should, this is one of the, I think, going to be one of the extraordinary outcomes of this crisis, which is that creativity and innovation, I think, will be at an all-time high. And I hope we can be able to support that in the coming years. And so I will also make sure that you've got that list of support, and you will get something in the Chancellor's statement on this as well when he does it in September. That is going to be key, because I've already been in one meeting where he's mentioned this. What are we going to do with creating an opportunity for small businesses and giving them that structure to be able to survive?
Thank you. That's really helpful. I think what I'll do is give one more chance for anybody that hasn't yet asked a question, and then that will be it. I think you've spent giving us enough of your time today.
It was a real pleasure. I'll do it anytime you like, and I hope I haven't depressed anyone, but be optimistic.
No, I think that's really great. Just before we sort of finish up, I asked this at the beginning, but obviously you weren't here. We have recorded it tonight. Obviously, it won't go off my computer unless we've got everyone's permission to do so. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely fine with me. In which case, I'm gonna. Can I take a screenshot so I can put this on my update? So if you all look handsome and happy, I'm gonna do it in just 1 second. Perfect. Thank you very much, guys. I really enjoyed this, and you know where I am.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. Please sort of keep it on our website. We'll do some more of these. They do work quite well. And everyone stay safe. Yeah. So I think on that note, we'll close the meeting. All right.
Council 2 o'clock Thursday.
See you there.
Yes, Anthony.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Anthony.
Thank you.